Hi, this is Bernard Miller, and in this tutorial I will show you how I create narrowband images. So I create master images for each of the three channels. In this case, I have data for all three narrowband channels for NGC 281, the Pacman Nebula. Here's the hydrogen alpha. I have OIII and S2. So what I do is I create my masters and I bring those into Photoshop. Now I have another tutorial on M51 where I go through from beginning to end how I create my masters and take that image all the way through. So I'm not going to go over how I create this master, but you want to create a master and then bring it into Photoshop. I also create a synthetic luminance here that you'll see, and the way I do that is over in PixInsight. So I'll come to Process, All Processes, and Image Integration, and I will click Add Files and add the three files, the images for each of the three channels. I set the hydrogen alpha as the reference, and then I leave everything else pretty much at the default. You can see here in particular you want to make sure that there's no rejection, and then I just click the circle there and let it go, and that creates my master. And you look at that and you look at the histogram, everything looks good. You can go to real-time preview and maybe just increase the brightness just a bit here. Apply that, and then change this to NGC 281 underscore synth underscore loom, and then file, save as, and oops, let me see. So just do synth loom, and you can do save, and yes, you can overwrite it, make it 16-bit when you save it, click OK. So that's how I create my synthetic luminance. And then over here in Photoshop I will just do File, Open, and open that synthetic luminance I just saved. So to begin with, we've got three channels. I'm going to make this an SHO image, which means S2 is mapped to red, hydrogen is mapped to green, and oxygen is mapped to blue. So I start with my S2 image, and I come up to Image, Adjustments, Mode, and change it to RGB color. And then I click on this icon down here. It's a circle that's half black, half white, and select Hue and Saturation. Click on the Colorize box. Make sure the hue is set to 0. The saturation I set to 100, and the lightness to -50. And then I make this a clipping mask, which is Layer, Create Clipping Mask. And what that says is apply this layer, the hue and saturation, to the layer immediately below it, and only the layer immediately below it. So once I've done that, I then go for my green channel. This is my red channel. My green channel is hydrogen alpha, Control A, Control C, and then paste that with Control V on top here, and then change this mode from normal to screen mode. And then the same thing, you do a hue and saturation, colorize. This is the green channel, so you want the hue to be 120. Again, this should be 100 and -50. And layer, create clipping mask. And one thing I forgot here, never mind. Yeah, change this to screen mode. So, okay, thought maybe I'd forgotten to do that. Then, finally, you come up here to your OIII channel, Control A, Control C, and paste that on top with Control V, and then change this to screen mode, and hue and saturation, click the colorize box, and for blue you want to make this 240. Again, saturation 100, lightness minus 50, layer, create clipping mask. So there is your initial image, and what I've done with that screen mode is it's kind of like those old projection TVs that had the three projectors, red, green, and blue projector that projected onto a screen, and you get a color image. So the next thing I'm going to do is just to keep track of what's going on, I'm going to double click this and call this OIII blue. So I know that's the blue channel. Double click there and make this HA green, and double click this and make this S2 red. And then the next thing I'm going to do is use this again to do a levels layer for each one of these. So click on the image, go to levels, click on here and create levels. And then we'll automatically make these a clipping mask layer that applies only to the layer below it. So what I do is I try and even up the levels, and you can see here this thing has a floor of about 20, let me see, what is that, I'll call it 26. So I'm going to leave a layer, a floor of about 8. You know, just make sure you're not clipping anything. So 8, 26 minus 8 is 18. So I'll make this 18. Come down to this, and this is about 15. So 15 minus 8 is 7. And then the levels for your red, this is a floor of about 24. So 24 minus 8 is 16. And you can see you went from here to here, and this just brought out a lot more contrast and even up the levels, and I think looks a little better. So what I do here, again, just to keep track of things, is I'll click on this top layer here, and then click on this little folder icon to create a group, double click, and call it OIII blue. Then you click here, hold down the shift key, and click here, and then click and hold and drag, oops, that didn't work, and click and hold and drag these three up into the folder, and then you close this folder. And then do the same thing for the other ones. This is HA green folder, click here, hold down the shift key, click here, then click and hold and move it up into the folder. And finally, to red, and this gets you a nice, just brings some order, and you know what you're doing, so you can know which channel, and you can always expand each of these channels to work on the layers below them. So the first thing I do is I zoom in a little bit here and look at the stars, and if usually the hydrogen alpha channel has the smallest stars, and if I turn off and on, you can see that the S2, hopefully that's coming through, their stars there are bigger than they are in the HA channel. So what I'm going to do is expand this, click on the channel, and then filter RC Astro Star Shrink. And you can Google Star Shrink or RC Astro Star Shrink and find out about this plugin. You can purchase it. It's a Photoshop plugin, and what it does is what it says it does. It shrinks your stars, so you can focus on different. As you slide this, it works on different. You see different size stars, so you can see when you get way down here, the smaller stars start to shrink, and up here some of the bigger stars start to shrink. So I usually go for a radius of about 20. A strength, I start off about 6, and sharpness, I do 0, and you can see the sharpness basically does some sharpening. So So this goes to -5 on the sharpness, which makes your stars fuzzy, and you can go all the way up to +5, which sharpens and hardens your stars. So these are the settings I start with. I click OK. I let it do its thing. And when I'm done, you can see that the star sizes are very, very similar now. And when I bring in the other channel, you can see that it just prevents halos. You know, when you have a star like this in one channel, the stars are much bigger. I think that's how you get the halos. You do have the magenta color, and we'll take care of that later, but I do that at this stage just to start out with decent looking stars. So the next thing I'm going to do is, as with all SHO images, it tends to be green heavy, and we're going to address this in several ways, but I'm not a big fan of green. Some people are. There's nothing that says you have to worry about it. I just am not a fan of green. So usually what I do is I click on my green and I'll drop my opacity down to about 90%, and you can see that it just, I don't know, it just softens up the green a bit and brings out some more of the blues, some of the reds. So I'll do that. Then I will come over and grab my synthetic luminance with Control A and Control C, and then Control V to paste it on top there, and change this to luminosity mode. And then I'll usually make the opacity of this channel about 50%, and as you can see, it just, especially around some of these ridges here, down here, it just, I don't know, just brings a little bit more of the detail and brightens it up a bit. So once I have that, I'm going to try and address some things here. One thing is the magenta stars, so I'm going to come down here and select a selective color. And then for my reds, which are over here, they're kind of hiding behind this green here, but I'm going to back my cyan off to about -20, and that'll, it makes the reds a little more rust colored rather than fire engine red. And then magenta, I'm going to back this way off to about 50, and you'll see that it gets rid of that magenta in the stars. So your stars have lost a lot of that magenta, and you can start to see some blue stars over here and red stars and orange stars. So it makes the stars look a little bit more natural, although they do tend a little more towards the white. But anyway, I do that adjustment, and then I create another group, and I call this synthetic. So this was my synthetic luminance, and actually this layer here was my synthetic luminance, or whatever you want to call it. And again, click, shift, click, drag this up into this folder. Now I've got this folder. And you can see, oops, if you back this out, you can see what I think is the beginnings of a pretty decent image here. Still a lot of green heavy, but we're going to take care of that a little bit later on. Stars don't have that magenta feel to it, so it's looking pretty good. So the next thing I'm going to do is create a layer that's called Combine All Beneath. And you do that by holding down the Shift, Control, and Alt keys all at once, and then typing N as in Nancy, E as in Edward, and it creates this layer. And you can double click and call this Combine All Beneath, or whatever you want to call it. Then I make a duplicate layer by dragging this down to here, and I change this layer to soft light, and then back the opacity off to about 30. You can play with it and see what you like, but it goes from this to this, so this just creates better contrast. And again, you can play with this. You can make this 30 or 25 and see which one you like. So we'll leave that there, and then I create one last folder and call this soft light, and then put these two layers, oops, Mouse is giving me trouble. Click here, click and drag. Oh, come on, man. Killing me. Shift, click and hold, drag up here. And then that is a fairly good image. And usually what I do here is File, Save As. And I'll save this as a Photoshop. And I will call it something like NGC 281 SHO PS1, and then I will click Save. Yes, I'll overwrite because I did this before, but I'll overwrite it. And if you look down in the lower left here, you can see it's saving, and it takes a little while to save here in this mode. So I'm going to pause this and come back when it's done saving. Okay, so it's finished saving that, and the next thing I'm going to do, I've saved this, so I've saved it in Photoshop format, so all these layers are in that file, and you know, whatever, a month from now, if I pull this up, I can always come over here and click on any one of these layers and go back and play with it, adjust it, tweak it, whatever I want to do. So then I'm now going to flatten this layer by clicking on Layer, Flatten Image. And now I have a nice flattened image. This is basically a color image of the Pacman. So the next thing I do is I come up to my histogram and I look at it. It's looking pretty good. I'll maybe do Control L and play around with the different layers like red. I may shift this over to the left and align it with some of the other ones like that. So somewhere around there. Just make sure to start out with that the levels are, you know, somewhat lined up. It's not really absolutely necessary that you do that, but something I like to do to start out with before I do this next step. So the next step is I create another layer by dragging this down, this icon here. It looks like a piece of paper with one edge folded up. And then I'm going to do a series of selective color adjustments that I think really makes the image go from this green thing. It's going to pull out a lot more of the golds and the reds. And I'll give a shout out to Bob Frank that came up with this. This is where I learned it from, and I think it does a wonderful job of, again, taking something like this, which still has a whole lot of green, and bringing out a lot more of the golds and reds. So the first thing I do is Image, Adjustments, Selective Color, and then I'll work on the green channel and take cyan minus 100 and magenta to minus 25. Okay, and then Image, Adjustments, Selective Color. Now I'm going to work on the yellow channel and cyan minus 100 and magenta plus 25. Click OK, and then Image, Adjustments, Selective Color, and I'll work on the cyan. Now this next step is optional, but I use it sometimes because I think it helps. I click on the cyan channel and just do a -1, and then yellow, minus 100, click OK, and then Image, Adjustments, one last Selective Color, work on the cyan channel again, and magenta goes to minus 25, and yellow, minus 100, and then I click OK. And we took this from here to here. And I think most of you will probably agree that this is a more pleasing image. You got these nice reds and golds and blues, and I just really like what it does to the image. And then I just do layer and flatten. And that's looking pretty good. The next thing I am going to do is create a star mask. So I'm going to click down here I'm going to use a technique I saw at AIC. Martin Pugh showed this in one of the talks he gave a couple years ago, and it's one of the better, if not the best way I've ever found to really create a star mask, because you're going to see it's going to, if it's a star, it's pretty much going to capture it. So you do it by making another layer, and then doing filter, other, high pass, and I make this 1, a radius of 1, and then filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I make this a radius of 1.2, and then image adjustments, threshold, and you get this mess here, and you use your up arrow key to go once, twice, I'm going to go one more time, 3 times, click OK, and then Control A and Control C to select and copy that. Then I click on my Channels tab, click on this icon over here and click on New Channel, and I call it Stars, and then Control V as in Victor to paste it in there, Control D to unselect it. Then I come back up here to my RGB channel, click back on Layers, and drag this into the trash. Now when I go to select, I can load selection and I can load my stars channel, and here's my selection. Now, one drawback to this is that you can see some of the bigger stars don't get selected. And so I come over here to my magic wand, select it, hold down the shift key, and then I go through and click on all of these bigger stars to make sure that they're fully selected. And this is a little laborious. It's not the most fun you'll ever have doing image processing, but basically I go through and I look for some of the bigger stars and make sure that they're fully selected. This group down here, that one. And I'm going to go through the whole image. So what I'm going to do is pause this and finish up selecting some of the stars that were missed, and I'll be back. Okay, so here I am. I've gone and selected all the stars. I've gone through my image and I've looked and I've made sure that I've selected all of these larger stars that may not have gotten selected. I may have missed 1 or 2, and if you do, it's like not the end of the world, but basically you get the idea. You go through and you just make sure all of your bigger stars. Now if I turn this off and on, you can see, look at here at some of these small stars. There are actually stars there, and it picked it up, so it does a really good job. So once I've done that, I'm going to go to Select, Modify, Expand, and expand it by about 2. And then I'm going to do Shift F6 and smooth it by about 2. And then I'm going to come up to Select, Save Selection, and I'm going to overwrite that stars. I'm going to select the stars channel, replace channel, and click OK. And now I've got my star mask. So I can do Control D to deselect. And what I do at this point is I'm going to do some noise reduction. I usually do my noise reduction up front because I'm going to do some sharpening later, and I don't want to sharpen noise. So I'm going to make another layer here, and I'm going to come up to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and it's going to open up this other window any day now. There it is. I'm going to zoom in, and you may be able to see there's a lot of color noise here. You can play around with this, but this is 200%, but you can see a lot of color noise. If I grab this, there's noise up in here too. So I'm going to come up here to noise reduction. I'm going to make this slider go up to about 20. And then the color noise reduction, I'm going to take this all the way up until that's done a really good job. 18, maybe go up to about 20. It's done a really good job on that color noise. Really, really good job. Maybe make this 30. And then I'm going to click OK. And that's smooth that a bit. And then I'm going to do layer flatten image. So the next thing I'm going to do is now I'm going to do some sharpening. And I'm going to again create another layer. I'm going to click on image, adjustments, and desaturate. And then I'm going to do filter, other, high pass. And I usually make this radius about 4. Somewhere between 4 and 5 or between 3 and 5 depending on the image. You can play around, see what works better for you, and click OK. Then filter, noise, reduce noise, and click OK. And then once that's done, I'm going to come up here and change the blending mode to linear light. And I think you'll agree that that sharpened the heck out of it. In fact, it sharpened it too much. So I'm going to back the opacity off to about 30%. If you zoom in here, especially in this area, take a look as I blink this. Really makes that pop, really brings out the detail in that area. It does, however, really, really sharpen your stars, which I don't like, so I will do select, load selection, stars, click OK. Then I'll come up to layer, layer mask, hide selection, and it creates this mask over here. And if you hold down the Alt key and click in this mask, you can see it's created this star mask, but it's inverted, so all your stars are blocked. And so as you can see, you get a lot of the sharpening, but your stars don't get. Now, sometimes you can get little halos around a nebula. You can get these little halos. So what I do there is I hover over the mask, I right click and select and mask. I'll feather this, and then I'll take the shift edge and just make these a lot bigger. I just want to make sure that I'm selecting the entire area around the star. So now I'm getting a lot of the sharpening, but I'm not doing anything to my stars. And then layer flatten image. Then the next thing I'm going to do is create another layer, and again come up to filter, camera raw. I'm going to come up to this basic menu. See here, there's different menus. I'm going to click the basic, come down to clarity, and make this about 50. And again, you can see what that's done. Some would argue that's too much. I would be one of them, so I'm going to back this off, to about 50. I'll call that good. May still be a little too much. I don't know, maybe make it 40. Okay. So again, I think you'll agree that that adds a little bit more contrast and depth to the image, so I like it. But again, don't want it done to my stars, so select, load selection, stars, okay, layer, layer mask, hide selection, zoom in, hover over the mask, right click, select and mask, feather this by eye, oop, maybe a little too much there, back off a little, and then shift edge just to make these things bigger, click OK, and just click that, so, okay, and then layer flatten image. And that pretty much, I would say is pretty much finished. And the thing is, if you look at it, I mean, the stars don't have that magenta. I don't know if you're seeing it here. That's clearly a blue. There's an orange star, another much, blue star. So you're getting some nice star color, nice orange color here. So none of these stars are really looking that bad. Now, I'm going to do another short tutorial to show how to blend in RGB stars. I do have some RGB stars for this, and I'll do another short video that shows how I do that. But for now, we're going to leave the stars the way they are. And I would basically call that good. I would say File, Save As. And again, for Photoshop, oh, that stinks. Okay, let me do a kick save here, because I think what I did is when I named that one, yeah, I named it PS1. So let me come over here to where am I? So this PS1 layers I'm going to get rid of. I'm going to rename this one. Oh, what did I do? Okay, I opened it up. PS1, I didn't want to open it up like that. Yeah, so here we are. Let me try and save this. I think what I did when I saved that other one, I did not save it with the layers, and I want to fix that. Okay, I did double check myself and I'm good. I thought I had messed up, but I hadn't. So anyway, this is done, and I'm just going to do File, and I'm going to save this. And then usually what I'll do is I'll look at my image size, and I see 54.042 by 55.569. So I probably crop this over in PixInsight. So when I come up to my crop here, I want to change these to the 54.042 by 55.569 and return, and I'll cancel this. There we go. So what I'm going to do here is some of this stuff over here on the left, I'm just going to move this over and crop it a bit. Just, yeah. And again, whatever looks good to you, I'll just play around with this. But bottom line is I'm just trying to crop out some of the slop that's on the edges there. I'm going to get this star up here. But I'm going to call that good. Right click, crop. Layer, flatten image, and then one last thing is image rotation 90 degrees counterclockwise. Just looks like more of a Pacman when you do that way. And then I usually do File, Save As, PS1 _ crop. And yeah, go ahead and replace. And then that would be my final image, and that's something that I have. The only thing left to do, if you're sticklers, if you have RGB stars, you could blend those into this image. And again, I will do another tutorial on how I do that. But that's how I do my narrowband. I hope you found this useful. If so, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time.